The Galactic Custodial Archives contain exactly 47,612,309 rules about interacting with pre-contact civilizations. Rule number 1 about humanity states, in 14 different languages and 3 forms of interpretive dance: never, take, prisoners, during, harvest. Nobody reads rule number 1. Krelzix Tibornathon the 16th had been filing incident reports for the Galactic Custodial Archives for 342 years. His office, located in sub-basement 73 of the administrative nexus on Bureaucracy Prime, smelled perpetually of recycled air and crushing disappointment. The walls were the color of depression mixed with beige. His desk was a monument to tedium, covered in data pads that blinked with the urgency of paint drying. He was, by every measurable standard, exactly where the universe wanted him to be. On the morning of October 1st, Earth Standard Time, though Krelzix had no concept of what October meant or why it should matter, he received a notification that made his third eyelid twitch. Fleet Commander Vexthron Hellscourge the Annihilator had submitted a requisition form for a harvesting operation on Sol 3, colloquially known as Earth, scheduled for the 31st day of the 10th month. Krelzix stared at the form for 17 minutes. Then he pulled up humanity's file. The file for humanity was 4,000 pages longer than any other species file in the entire archive. This was unusual. Most species got a neat 2-page summary: atmospheric composition, protein structure, recommended stunning voltage, estimated meat yield per kilogram of body weight. Humanity's file started with a cover page that simply read, in bold red letters, "Seriously, read the entire file. All of it. Yes, even the appendices, especially the appendices." Krelzix had read it multiple times. He'd even read Appendix 7, which was just a list of reasons not to engage humanity during their various seasonal observances, cross-referenced with incident reports from 6 different galactic cycles, 3 extinction-level events, and 1 case of spontaneous religious conversion among a previously atheistic species who'd been so traumatized they'd invented a god just to have someone to pray to. Rule number 1 sat on page 1, written in a font size usually reserved for evacuation procedures during reactor meltdowns. Fleet Commander Vexthron Hellscourge the Annihilator, Krelzix knew from personal experience, had never read anything that didn't directly involve his own kill count. Krelzix did what any reasonable bureaucrat would do when faced with imminent catastrophe. He filed a formal objection, routed it through the proper channels, attached all relevant documentation, including the 4,000 pages and 7 appendices, and then went to lunch. The cafeteria on Bureaucracy Prime served a protein paste that tasted like regret, with hints of administrative oversight. Krelzix ate it slowly, savoring the familiar flavor of institutional mediocrity, while mentally composing the incident report he'd inevitably have to file in approximately 30 Earth days. He already had a title picked out: "We Told You So, Comprehensive Edition." Vexthron Hellscourge the Annihilator was exactly the kind of person who added "the Annihilator" to his own name. He stood 9 feet tall, had 4 arms ending in claws that could rend titanium, eyes like burning coals, and a voice that sounded like gravel being fed through a meat grinder. His ship, the Inexorable Doom, was shaped like a serrated dagger and painted the color of dried blood because subtlety was for species that didn't have 4 arms. He'd been harvesting pre-contact civilizations for 73 years with a success rate of 100%. His technique was simple, elegant, and remarkably effective. Show up, look terrifying, activate the paralysis field, collect the specimens, leave. The entire operation typically took 4 hours, start to finish. He'd perfected it to an art form. When Krelzix's objection arrived on his command deck, Vexthron read the first sentence, which was, respectfully requesting reconsideration of harvesting operation on Sol 3, scheduled for October 31st, due to rule number 1 regarding seasonal complications. He deleted it. Seasonal complications, Vexthron roared to his second-in-command, a nervous creature named Fleabix, who had the unfortunate job of agreeing with everything Vexthron said. These bureaucrats think weather is going to interfere with my operation. Absolutely absurd, Commander, Fleabix agreed, his voice climbing 3 octaves higher than usual. Weather is no match for the inexorable doom. Humans are barely sentient. I've seen the reports. They still use wheels for transportation. Wheels! They haven't even figured out proper gravitational manipulation. Primitive. Laughably primitive, Commander. And this paper pusher thinks I should be concerned about what? Autumn, leaves falling, a slight chill in the air. Fleabix, who had actually skimmed the attachment and seen the words "Never take prisoners" in very large, very bold font, wondered briefly if he should mention it. Then he looked at Vexthron's face, calculated his life expectancy if he disagreed, and said, "Preposterous. Absolutely preposterous, Commander. Set course for Earth. We leave in 3 weeks. I want the full harvesting crew ready. This is going to be the easiest collection of my career. I'm thinking we grab a few hundred specimens, run the standard tests, and I'm back in time for the quarterly Conquerors Gala." "Brilliant plan, Commander." Vexthron smiled, revealing teeth that had been specifically sharpened for intimidation purposes. "Humans. I've seen their films, their entertainment. They're terrified of the dark. Can you imagine? We show up at night, hit them with the paralysis field, and they'll be so scared they'll probably faint before we even start collecting. This is going to be target practice." Fleabix laughed, though it sounded like a small animal choking. Neither of them noticed that the date they'd selected was highlighted in humanity's file in a color the database designated as "Oh dear God, no." The inexorable doom dropped out of hyperspace on October 31st at precisely 6:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, in a low orbit over North America. Vexthron stood on his command deck, arms crossed all 4 ways, looking every inch the terrifying predator he'd spent 7 decades becoming. "Initiate scanning sequence. I want residential zones with the highest population density. We'll start there. Maximize efficiency." The scanner operator, a blob-like creature named Gorthix, peered at his readouts with his 17 eyes. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual activity planet-side." "Define unusual." "Well, sir, there appear to be small humans, moving in organized groups through the streets. They're wearing some kind of... I don't know how to classify this, sir. One appears to be dressed as a medical professional. Another is wearing what looks like a death shroud. And that one appears to be... Is that supposed to be US, sir?" Vexthron stomped over to the view screen. Below, clearly visible through the ship's magnification systems, groups of small humans were indeed moving door to door through residential areas, carrying containers and wearing elaborate costumes. "What in the name of the void are they doing?" I believe Gorthix consulted his database, which had not been updated with humanity's full file, because that would have taken 3 weeks to download. "I believe they're called children, sir, juvenile humans, and they appear to be demanding tribute from dwelling to dwelling. The adults are giving them offerings, sir, voluntarily." Vexthron stared. "They're conducting raids? The children? Without weapons?" "It appears so, Commander. And, sir, the dwellings themselves, they're decorated with symbols of death and violence. Simulated corpses hanging from structures, carved vegetables with fire inside. Representations of our species' anatomical structure displayed as ornamentation." Fleabix, who had been quietly having an anxiety attack in the corner, whispered, "Commander, perhaps we should..." "Perhaps we should what?" Vexthron spun on him. "Run away from children, from decorations. This is clearly some kind of a cultural display, a festival. They're celebrating. This is perfect. They're all distracted, grouped together, completely vulnerable." "But, sir, the file said..." "I don't care what the file said. Look at them. They're wearing costumes, playing games. This is a species that thinks hanging fake skeletons is entertainment. Deploy the harvesting teams. Start with Residential Zone 773, the one with all the decorated dwellings, maximum specimen collection. I want at least 200 humans aboard this ship within the hour. Gorthix and Flibix exchanged glances. Somewhere in the galactic custodial archives, Krelzix Tibornathon the 16th felt a disturbance in the bureaucratic force, like 1,000 rules being violated simultaneously. "Deploying teams now, Commander," Gorthix said quietly. The harvesting teams descended on the suburb of Maplewood Heights at exactly 7:32 p.m. There were 12 teams of 4 soldiers each, all equipped with paralysis weapons, containment fields, and enough firepower to subjugate a small moon. They'd done this hundreds of times. The procedure was simple, efficient, foolproof. Team leader Zarnak materialized in the middle of Oakwood Drive, activated his intimidation stance, which involved spreading all 6 of his appendages and emitting a low-frequency roar designed to trigger primal fear responses in mammalian species. A small human dressed as a vampire looked at him and said, "Cool costume, mister." Zarnak paused. What? Is that like animatronics? Can I touch it?" The small human reached out. "Stay back, primitive!" Zarnak raised his weapon. "You are being harvested by the inexorable doom. Resistance is— Tommy!" An adult human female appeared on the porch of the nearest dwelling. "Don't touch the Halloween decorations without asking." She looked at Zarnak. "Sorry about that. Kids, you know. Love the setup, by the way. Very realistic. Did you 3D print that suit?" Zarnak stared at her. She was holding a bowl of small wrapped items. Candy, his scanner indicated. Processed sugar and chocolate. She was smiling at him, completely unafraid. The child was still trying to touch his carapace. "I am not a decoration. I am Zarnak the Destroyer. Tremble before— Here, sweetie." The woman dropped several pieces of candy into the child's container. "You folks doing a whole haunted house thing? That's ambitious for a Tuesday. Your group should coordinate with the Hendersons down the street. They've got a whole graveyard set up. Very impressive." Team 3, led by Morglax the Eviscerator, was having similar difficulties 4 houses down. They'd activated their paralysis field, which should have frozen every human within a 50-meter radius in place, unable to move or speak. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by teenagers who seemed completely unaffected. "Dude, check out these props." One teenage human was examining the paralysis generator like it was a curiosity instead of a weapon capable of shutting down neural function. "This is sick. Where'd you get it? Amazon?" "Stop touching that!" Morglax roared. "That is military-grade equipment designed to— Oh my God, it has sound effects too. Jake, get a video of this." Another teenage human was pointing a small device at them. The scanner identified it as a primitive recording apparatus. They were being documented, like zoo animals. No, worse, like entertainment. "This is going on TikTok, 100%, the teenager said. "You guys are going to go viral." Morglax had no idea what viral meant, but it sounded biological and threatening. He activated his emergency beacon. "Command, this is Team 3. We have a situation. The humans they're not afraid. They keep trying to touch us, and they're documenting our presence on their primitive information network." Vexthron's voice crackled through the communicator. "Then activate the terror protocols. Make them understand fear." Team 7, meanwhile, had made the catastrophic mistake of materializing in front of the dwelling belonging to Priscilla Donovan, age 67, retired librarian, grandmother of 4, and a woman who had exactly 0 remaining instances of being impressed by anything left in her personal inventory. Priscilla had been handing out candy for 43 consecutive years. She'd seen every costume, every prop, every attempt at scaring or impressing. She'd lived through 3 teenagers trying to egg her house, the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, and that one year when the Henderson boy thought it would be funny to hide in her rose bushes and jump out at trick-or-treaters until she'd caught him with the garden hose. when a 9-foot-tall alien with 4 arms and bioluminescent threat display organs materialized on her front lawn. Priscilla looked up from her bowl of fun-sized Snickers, adjusted her glasses and said, "You're blocking my pathway." The alien, whose name was Krelnoth and who had personally harvested 42 civilizations, stared at her. "Human female. You will submit to harvesting procedures or face—" "I'll face what exactly?" Priscilla set down her candy bowl. "You're standing on my petunias. Do you have any idea how much work I put into those petunias? It's October. They should be dormant. But no, I've been keeping them alive through sheer force of will and expensive fertilizer, and you just stomp them. Your petunias are irrelevant. You are being collected for scientific—" "And another thing. It's 7:45 p.m. I've been sitting out here since 5:30. My back hurts. My feet hurt. I've had 16 kids ask me if I have Reese's Cups, which I don't because they're expensive and I'm on a fixed income. And now you show up with your—" She gestured vaguely at his entire being. "Your light-up appendages and your threatening posture and your complete disregard for residential landscaping, and you expect me to be what? Scared? Impressed?" Krelnoth had never encountered this particular form of resistance. Violence, yes. Pleading, certainly. Religious fervor occasionally. But aggressive irritation, delivered by a human female who barely reached his second elbow joint. This was not in the manual. "I am Krelnoth the Subjugator. I have conquered worlds. Entire species have fallen before my might." "That's wonderful. Good for you. Now get off my petunias before I get my husband's leaf blower." "Your leaf blower? It's gas-powered. Makes a terrible noise. You won't like it." From inside the inexorable doom, Vexthron was receiving status reports from all 12 teams, and every single one of them was some variation of the same theme. This was not going according to plan. "Command, the humans are offering us candy," reported Team 4. "They keep saying we should take some for the road. What does that mean? What road? We arrived via spacecraft." "Command, I've activated full threat display and the humans are applauding," Team 8 chimed in. "One of them asked if we do birthday parties." "Command, I'm being followed by a pack of juvenile humans who want to know where they can buy costumes like ours. They're offering us currency, paper currency. Should I accept it? What's the protocol?" Vexthron's face had turned a color that didn't have a name in any known language. It was somewhere between purple, red, and the shade of a supernova about to explode. "Enough. All teams, forget subtlety, forget the paralysis fields. Just grab humans and bring them to the transport beams. Now." Team leader Zarnak received this order with some relief. Finally, direct action. He reached out with both primary arms toward the nearest human, a teenage female dressed as something called a witch, and attempted to physically grab her. She screamed. For exactly 0.3 seconds, Zarnak thought he'd finally produced the appropriate fear response. Then he realized she wasn't screaming in terror. She was screaming in anger. "Did you just grab me? Did you seriously just put your hands on me without consent?" The teenage human had gone from mildly amused to absolutely furious in the span of a single heartbeat. "Jake, this creep just grabbed me." The teenage male named Jake, who had been filming everything, immediately pivoted. "Yo, not cool, man. You don't touch people." Within seconds, Zarnak found himself surrounded by approximately 15 teenage humans, all of them shouting variations of "not okay," "call the police," and several terms he didn't understand but which sounded very aggressive. One of them was indeed calling someone on their primitive communication device. Another was live streaming the entire encounter. "I am attempting to harvest you for—" "I don't care what your roleplay scenario is, dude. You don't put your hands on anyone. Someone get the cops." Team 9, operating 3 streets over, tried a different approach. They activated their containment beam, which was supposed to immobilize humans and transport them directly to the ship. The beam was calibrated for terrified, passive subjects. They had not calibrated it for Gerald Henderson, age 52, who'd had exactly 3 beers, was dressed as a pirate, and was in the middle of explaining to his neighbor Doug why the Dallas Cowboys were absolutely going to make the playoffs this year, no matter what Doug's statistics said. The containment beam hit Gerald mid-sentence. Gerald looked down at the glowing energy field surrounding his body, looked up at the alien spacecraft hovering overhead, looked back at Doug. "Are you seeing this, Gerald? I think those might be actual aliens, right? I told you there was weird stuff happening. Did I not tell you about the lights I saw last month?" The containment beam began pulling Gerald upward. His wife, Martha, came running out of the house. "Gerald, put him down. He hasn't finished the gutters yet." Gerald was floating approximately 15 feet in the air now, still clutching his beer. "Martha, take a picture, take a picture. Doug doesn't believe me." "I believe you now, Gerald." Doug was indeed taking pictures. So were approximately 47 other neighbors who'd emerged from their homes to see what the commotion was about. Team 9's commander frantically consulted his handbook. Nowhere in the handbook did it explain what to do when the specimen being harvested was enthusiastic about the process, and his spouse was more concerned about home maintenance than his abduction. Priscilla Donovan, meanwhile, had gone inside her house, retrieved her late husband's gas-powered leaf blower, and returned to find Krelnoth, the subjugator, still standing on her petunias, apparently frozen in some kind of existential crisis. She pulled the starter cord. The leaf blower roared to life with a sound like a mechanical demon having a very bad day. Krelnoth, whose species had evolved on a planet with very little atmospheric disturbance, had extremely sensitive auditory organs. The sound of the leaf blower at close range was to him roughly equivalent to standing inside an active volcano while someone played death metal at maximum volume directly into his brain. He ran. A 9-foot-tall alien warrior who'd conquered 42 civilizations ran screaming from a 67-year-old woman with a leaf blower. Priscilla watched him go, nodded with satisfaction, shut off the leaf blower, and returned to her candy bowl. "Amateurs," she muttered. By 8:15 p.m., the situation had deteriorated from not going according to plan to comprehensive disaster, to what Vextron would later describe in his official report as "what the hell happened." A Team 2 had been chased 6 blocks by a man dressed as a werewolf who kept shouting that they were ruining the neighborhood aesthetic. Team 5 had accidentally materialized in the middle of a haunted house attraction and spent 20 minutes trying to escape while being chased by volunteers who thought the aliens were really committing to the bit. Team 11 had been adopted by a group of elderly humans who kept trying to feed them something called pumpkin spice cookies and wouldn't take no for an answer. And Gerald Henderson was still floating in the containment beam, now approximately 200 feet in the air, giving Doug a play-by-play analysis of the experience via his cell phone, while Martha shouted updates about which household chores he still needed to complete. Vextron stared at the tactical display, which looked like a diagram of chaos itself. How are we failing to collect specimens from a species that doesn't even have shields? Fleabix, who'd been having a continuous panic attack for the last 45 minutes, whispered, "Sir, the file, the warnings." "File? Perhaps we should—" "I don't need to read the file, I need results. All teams, converge on residential zone 773, coordinated assault. We grab everyone we can and get off this insane planet." All 12 teams received the order and began converging on Oakwood Drive, which was, unfortunately, where Priscilla Donovan lived. Priscilla had just handed out candy to a very polite group of children dressed as dinosaurs when she noticed approximately 50 aliens materializing in various positions along her street. They looked organized, coordinated, significantly more serious than the individual teams she'd been dealing with all evening. She set down her candy bowl, went inside, and emerged 30 seconds later carrying something that made every alien scanner on the inexorable Doom simultaneously flash warning signals. It was a decorative ceramic bowl filled with full-size candy bars. "All right," Priscilla's voice carried with the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years shushing people in a library. "I don't know what kind of stunt you people think you're pulling, but this is a residential neighborhood. There are children here. It's Halloween, and you are ruining it." Zarnak, who'd rejoined his team, raised his weapon. "Human female, we have orders to—" "I don't care about your orders. You know what I care about. I care that those kids dressed as dinosaurs might not get to finish their trick-or-treating because you people decided to stage some kind of flash mob invasion. I care that Mrs. Chen, 2 houses down, spent all week making her yard look like a haunted cemetery and you stepped on her tombstones. I care that it's 8:20 p.m. and I want to go inside and watch my programs, but I can't because you're all standing in my street. We are not a flash mob. Whatever that is, we are a harvesting operation sent to—" Priscilla opened the ceramic bowl. "Are you, though? Because from where I'm standing, you're a bunch of people in very expensive costumes, making a lot of noise and getting nothing accomplished. You've been here for almost an hour. You know how many houses these kids hit in an hour? At least 20. You know how many of my neighbors you've actually managed to kidnap? 0. That's not harvesting. That's loitering." The word loitering hit the assembled aliens with unexpected force. They were conquerors, warriors. They didn't loiter. "Now," Priscilla continued, her voice dropping to a tone that had once made the entire kindergarten class sit in absolute silence, "I'm going to give each of you 1 piece of full-size candy. Good candy, mind you. None of that cheap stuff. And then you're going to leave quietly, without breaking anything else, and we're all going to pretend this never happened. Understood?" 50 trained warriors, equipped with weapons that could level buildings, stood in complete silence. "I'll take that as a yes." Priscilla began walking down the street, handing a full-size Snickers to each alien she passed. "Here you go. You, yes you, take one. Don't be shy. There's plenty." And somehow, every single alien took the candy. Zarnak stared at the chocolate bar in his hand. It was approximately 3 inches long, wrapped in brown plastic with red lettering. According to his scanner, it contained sugar, cocoa, peanuts, and approximately 250 calories. It was objectively worthless, militarily meaningless, strategically irrelevant. He had never wanted to run away from anything more in his entire life. "Thank you, ma'am," he heard himself say. "You're welcome. Now go home." Aboard the inexorable Doom, Vextron watched this entire exchange through the viewscreen with an expression that suggested his brain was trying very hard to process something it fundamentally could not comprehend. Did my teams just get dismissed by a human grandmother with candy? Gorthix, who'd been quietly hoping for this outcome for the last 90 minutes, nodded. "Yes, Commander." "And they're leaving?" "It appears so, Commander." "Why?" "I believe, sir, that they're experiencing what humans call social conditioning." She reminded them of their maternal figures. It triggered subconscious compliance patterns. Vextron's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Bring them back now." "Sir, perhaps we should consider—" "I said now, and deploy me to the surface. I'll show these primitives what a real threat looks like." This was, even by the standards of what had already been a catastrophically bad decision-making day, the worst decision Vextron had ever made. He materialized on Oakwood Drive at exactly 8:34 p.m., 9 feet of pure rage and wounded pride, his threat display at maximum, his voice amplified to shake the ground. "Humans! I am Vextron Hellscourge the Annihilator. Your world is being harvested. You will submit to—" Every porch light on the street went out simultaneously. Vextron paused. This was unexpected. Darkness was supposed to be his advantage. Predators used darkness. Had the humans finally realized the danger and shut down the decorations activated, all of them, at once. Motion-activated zombies lurched to life. Animatronic witches cackled. Holographic ghosts appeared. Sound systems blasted horror movie soundtracks. Fog machines pumped out thick clouds of artificial mist. Strobe lights flashed. Mechanical spiders descended from trees. And somewhere, someone had installed a sound system that played what Vexthron's scanner identified as Monster Mash at a volume that violated several local noise ordinances. But the worst part, the part that would haunt Vexthron's nightmares for the rest of his extremely long life, was the synchronized decorative skeletons. There were 47 of them along Oakwood Drive, plastic skeletons, arranged in various humorous poses, skeletons on motorcycles, skeletons having tea parties, skeletons playing instruments, and when the music started, they all began moving in their mechanical, jerky way, creating the impression of a skeleton army rising to defend the neighborhood. Vexthron's species had evolved as ambush predators. Their instincts were finely tuned to assess threats based on movement, numbers, and aggressive display. What they saw in front of them was 47 humanoid figures, presumably the skeletal remains of defeated enemies, reanimated and synchronized in what could only be interpreted as a war dance. The humans had weaponized their decorations. "Retreat!" Vexthron's voice cracked. "All teams, retreat to the ship! Abort! Abort the mission!" He didn't wait to see if his orders were followed. He activated his personal transport beam and disappeared in a flash of light. On Priscilla Donovan's porch, she watched the last alien vanish, nodded with satisfaction, and went inside to watch Wheel of Fortune. The inexorable doom broke orbit at 8:47 p.m. All teams accounted for, 0 specimens collected, morale at an all-time low, and approximately 50 full-size candy bars distributed among the crew who'd been on the ground. In the command center, Vexthron sat in his chair, which had been specifically designed to make him look imposing and powerful. Now it just made him feel small. Around him, his crew worked in absolute silence. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak. Finally, Fleabix, demonstrating a courage he didn't know he possessed, said, "Commander, we should file the mission report." "No, sir. It's required by Galactic." "No. We are not filing a report that says we were defeated by decorations and a grandmother with a leaf blower. We're going to return to base. We're going to tell them there were unexpected complications, and we are never speaking of this again." "But, sir, the regulations can bite my lower appendage. Do you understand what will happen if we file an accurate report? We'll be laughed at for the rest of our careers." "Oh, there goes Vexthron, the great annihilator, who got chased off by lawn ornaments." "No, this didn't happen. We were never here." Gorthix, who'd been the one actually operating the scanners and had therefore seen everything, cleared his throat. "Commander, there is one small problem with that plan." "What?" "The humans. They documented everything. Their information network. They call it the Internet. Every team's encounter was recorded on multiple devices. It's already being distributed, globally. I'm detecting millions of views already. They're making what they call memes, sir." Vexthron's threat display activated involuntarily. "Show me." Gorthix pulled up the human internet on the main view screen. The first image that appeared was a freeze frame from one of the teenager's videos. It showed Zarnak mid-roar, with his arms spread wide and his mouth open in what was meant to be a terrifying display. The human had added text, "When you forget it's Halloween and show up to the party too early." Below it, the view count read 4.7 million views. The next one showed the moment Gerald Henderson had been floating in the containment beam, still holding his beer. The caption read, "This is fine." 7.2 million views. The third showed Priscilla handing out candy to the assembled alien warriors. Someone had added text that read, "Local grandma defeats alien invasion with full-size Snickers bars." 12.4 million views. Vexthron stared at the screen for a very long time. Then, in a voice that sounded like it was being produced by someone whose soul had left their body and was now operating on autopilot, he said, "Set course for Bureaucracy Prime." "Sir? We're going to the Galactic Custodial Archives. I need to read a file." The trip to Bureaucracy Prime took 6 days. During those 6 days, the footage from Halloween night on Earth spread across the human internet like a particularly aggressive virus. It jumped from Earth's local networks to the broader galactic information systems through channels nobody quite understood, but which seemed to involve something humans called VPNs and hacking, and because we felt like it. By the time the inexorable doom limped into orbit around Bureaucracy Prime, the footage had been viewed approximately 800 million times. There were compilation videos, analysis videos, reaction videos. Someone had set the whole thing to yakety sax, and that version alone had 200 million views. Zarnak had become what humans called a reaction GIF. Gerald Henderson had been interviewed by every major news network and had used his 15 minutes of fame to promote his small business selling custom gutters. Priscilla Donovan had been offered her own reality show, and Vexthron Hellscourge the Annihilator was now primarily known by his new human-given nickname, Skelly Scared Steve. Krelzik's Tabornathon the 16th was having a very unusual day. In 342 years of filing incident reports, he had never, not once, had someone voluntarily come to his office to ask for information. People avoided his office. His office was where careers went to die slowly, buried under paperwork and bureaucratic procedures. So when Fleet Commander Vexthron Hellscourge the Annihilator walked through his door, ducking to avoid hitting his head on the frame designed for smaller species, Krelzix nearly dropped his datapad. "I need to read the file on humanity," Vexthron said without preamble. "All of it, every page, every appendix." Krelzix blinked all 3 of his eyes in sequence. "Sir, I submitted the file to you 30 days ago with your mission briefing." "I know. I didn't read it. That was a mistake. I would like to read it now." "Sir, the file is 4,073 pages." "I'm aware. I have time." Krelzix pulled up the file on his largest datapad and handed it over. "Sir, if I may ask, what happened? Your mission report hasn't been filed yet, which is technically a violation of protocol, but given the unusual circumstances that I've been reading about on the galactic information networks..." "You've seen the videos." "Everyone has seen the videos, sir. There's a betting pool in sub-basement 47 about when you'll change your name." Vexthron's jaw clenched. "Just give me the file." He sat down in a chair that was far too small for him, holding a datapad that looked like a toy in his massive hands, and began to read. Page 1. Rule number 1, never take prisoners during harvest. He kept reading. Page 17 contained the first incident report, dated 847 Earth years prior. It described an attempted harvesting operation on October 31st by a species called the Vragoth Collective. The report was filed by Supreme Commander Thraxilon the Merciless. It was 300 pages long and written in what could only be described as all caps screaming. Vexthron read it twice. Then he read it again. "This can't be real," he muttered. Krelzix, who was pretending to work on other files but was absolutely listening to every word, said, "Oh, it's real, sir. Cross-referenced with medical reports, psychological evaluations, and 3 separate independent investigations. The Vragoth Collective no longer exists as a unified government. They fractured into 17 different factions after that incident. Half of them converted to pacifism. Because of Halloween? Well, technically because they attempted to harvest humans during Halloween. There's a distinction, sir. It's subtle but important." Vexthron kept reading. Page 147 detailed the cultural significance of October 31st to human civilization. It explained the concept of Halloween in extensive detail, with footnotes, cross-references, and what appeared to be a peer-reviewed academic paper about the psychological implications of voluntary fear-seeking behavior. Humans, the file explained, were the only known species in the galaxy that actively enjoyed being scared. They sought it out. They paid money for it. They created elaborate scenarios specifically designed to trigger their own fear responses, and they considered this entertainment. More disturbingly, they taught their children to do this from an extremely young age. The file contained a quote from a human child psychologist. Halloween allows children to confront their fears in a controlled environment, developing emotional resilience and social bonding through shared experiences of managed terror. Managed terror. Humans gave their children managed terror as a developmental tool. What kind of species does this? Vexthron looked up at Krelzix. The kind that evolved on a death world, sir. Earth is classified as Class 12 hazardous environment. It has weather patterns that can level cities, seismic activity that can swallow entire regions, biological diversity that includes thousands of species specifically evolved to kill other species in increasingly creative ways. Humans didn't develop technology because they were peaceful, sir. They developed it because their planet was actively trying to murder them on a daily basis, and they got really good at not dying. But the decorations, the skeletons, they display the remains of their dead as ornamentation. Krelzix nodded. Page 206, sir. Humans have what they call gallows humor. When faced with mortality, they make jokes about it. It's a coping mechanism. The decorations aren't threats, sir. They're humans laughing at death, because if they didn't laugh, they'd spend their entire existence in existential terror, and that's not evolutionarily advantageous. Vexthron read page 206, then 207, then the entire next section, which was titled Why Humans Think Death is Funny and Why You Should Be Concerned About That. The more he read, the more a horrible understanding began to dawn. Humans weren't fearless. They were covered in fear. Their entire planet was designed to kill them in hundreds of different ways. They had predators, parasites, diseases, natural disasters, and apparently, at one point, they'd nearly driven themselves extinct at least 3 times through various combinations of stupidity and bad luck. But instead of developing into a species paralyzed by terror, they'd somehow weaponized it. They'd turned fear into entertainment, into art, into a holiday that they celebrated by choice, by dressing their children in costumes and sending them door to door to demand candy from strangers. It was the most aggressively insane cultural adaptation Vexthron had ever encountered. And Halloween, the file explained in bold red letters on page 312, was when this cultural adaptation reached maximum intensity. On Halloween, humans expected to be scared. They wanted to be scared. They'd spent the entire month preparing to be scared. They'd decorated their homes, watched horror films, told scary stories, and psychologically prepared themselves for managed terror. So when actual aliens showed up trying to actually terrify them, the humans thought it was part of the entertainment. "Oh no," Vexthron whispered. "You're getting to the good part, sir," Krelzix said. Page 313 contained a detailed psychological analysis written by someone with 17 different academic credentials. The summary paragraph read, "Attempting to frighten humans on October 31st is the equivalent of entering a martial arts tournament and discovering your opponent has been training specifically for this exact scenario for the past 30 days. They are ready. They are excited. You cannot win. Do not try." On page 314 began the section titled The Thraxilon Incident, a comprehensive case study in why this is a terrible idea. Vexthron read and read and read. Supreme Commander Thraxilon, the Merciless of the Vragoth Collective, had been, according to all available records, one of the most effective military commanders in galactic history. He'd conquered 47 star systems. He'd subjugated 12 different species. His success rate was 99.7%. On October 31st, 847 Earth years ago, he'd led a harvesting operation on Earth with a force of 5,000 warriors, 17 capital ships, and enough firepower to glass a continent. He'd scheduled the operation to begin at midnight precisely because he'd calculated that catching humans while they were sleeping would minimize resistance. What Thraxilon didn't know was that on Halloween, humans didn't go to sleep at midnight. That's when the parties were starting. The Vragoth forces materialized in the middle of Times Square in New York City, which at that moment contained approximately 50,000 humans in various states of costume, inebriation, and celebratory chaos. The humans saw 5,000 aliens materialize in the middle of their Halloween party, and they cheered. They thought it was the best special effect they'd ever seen. They tried to take pictures with the aliens. They asked where they'd gotten their costumes. They offered the aliens drinks. Several humans attempted to dance with the Vragoth warriors, who were roughly 8 feet tall and covered in chitin plates. Thraxilon, standing in the middle of Times Square, surrounded by thousands of celebrating humans who were treating his invasion force like entertainment, made the same decision Vexthron had made. He ordered his troops to start grabbing humans by force. The humans stopped celebrating. What happened next was documented in approximately 4,700 individual witness accounts, 16 different video recordings. This was before humans had really perfected their recording technology. And one incident report that the file noted was written by a Vragoth psychiatrist 3 years after the event, as that's how long it took for Thraxilon to be capable of coherent speech again. The humans, who moments before had been friendly and welcoming, transformed. They'd been prepared for horror. They'd been expecting monsters. They'd psychologically geared themselves up for fear and terror and managed threats. When the Vragoth grabbed them, when the threat became real, all that preparation, all that cultural adaptation to living on a death world, all that practice at confronting fear, it didn't make them more scared. It made them angry. 50,000 humans, many of them wearing costumes that made them look like monsters, turned on 5,000 alien warriors. And the humans won. They didn't have weapons. They didn't have technology. They had alcohol, improvised clubs. The file noted that a traffic light pole had been used with devastating effectiveness, and 800 years' worth of pent-up frustration at living on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. The Vragoth retreated after 17 minutes. They left behind 347 soldiers, all of whom were rescued by human emergency services and treated for their injuries because, as one human paramedic was quoted as saying, "Yeah, they tried to kidnap people, but they're still hurt, and we're not monsters." Thraxilon the Merciless spent the next 6 years in psychiatric care. The Vragoth Collective issued a formal apology to humanity, paid reparations, and added Rule Number 1 to the Galactic Custodial Archives with a note that read, "Seriously, we mean it, don't." Vexthron finished reading the incident report at 2:47 a.m. station time. He'd been reading for 16 hours straight. His eyes hurt, his brain hurt. His pride had been dead for several days now and was currently being used as decorative ornamentation somewhere in his psyche. "They lost," he said quietly. 5,000 warriors against primitives with no technology, and they lost. "Yes, sir. Because of a holiday." "Yes, sir. A holiday about being scared." "Yes, sir." Vexthron set down the datapad. "What is harvest to humans?" The file keeps mentioning it but never explains it. Krelzix pulled up a supplementary document. Harvest, in human terms, refers to the autumn agricultural cycle. It's when they collect their food crops. It's associated with abundance, preparation for winter, and survival. Halloween specifically is believed to have originated from ancient human cultures that marked the end of harvest season and the beginning of winter. They believed the barrier between the living and dead was thinnest on that night. So when we said we were harvesting them, you told them you were collecting them like vegetables, sir. During the one night of the year they've spent thousands of years believing is when the dead walk among the living. Krelzix paused. In retrospect, the metaphor was perhaps not ideal. And this happens every year? Yes, sir. October 31st, Earth Standard Time, annually. It's one of their most widely celebrated holidays. Billions of humans participate in some form. Vexthron stood up slowly, his joints creaking. He'd aged a decade in the last 6 days. I need to file my mission report. Sir, if you'd like help with the... No, I'll file it myself. Accurately. Completely. He looked at Krelzix. The file says there were other incidents, after Thraxilon. Did anyone else try? Krelzix pulled up a list. 17 separate attempts over 847 years, sir. None successful. The file keeps getting updated, but nobody reads it. Well, almost nobody. Why do they keep trying? Because humans look harmless, sir. They're small. They're soft. They don't have natural weapons. On paper, they're one of the most vulnerable species in the galaxy. And then someone looks at Earth, sees a primitive civilization without shields or advanced weapons, and thinks, easy target. Krelzix's voice took on a tone that suggested he'd had this conversation before. What they don't realize is that humans aren't harmless because they're nice, sir. They're harmless because they've made a choice to be nice. And when you threaten them, especially on Halloween, they make that choice very quickly. Vexthron nodded slowly. Update the file. Sir? Add my incident to the file. All of it. The decorations, the leaf blower, the grandmother with the candy, everything. Maybe the 18th time will be what finally makes people read it. I'll add it immediately, sir. Krelzix hesitated. For what it's worth, sir, you survived. That's more than some of the other commanders can say. Thraxilon survived. Thraxilon spent 6 years in psychiatric care and changed his name to Theodore. He now runs a small cafe on Relaxation Station 7 where he serves herbal tea and refuses to discuss his military career. I'm told his scones are excellent. Vexthron left the office without another word. The mission report filed by Fleet Commander Vexthron Hellscourge, the Annihilator, was 173 pages long. It was detailed, thorough, and brutally honest. It described every mistake, every miscalculation, every moment of catastrophic failure. It included transcripts of communications, scanner logs, and approximately 15 separate instances where Vexthron wrote some variation of, I should have read the file. The report concluded with a section titled Recommendations for Future Operations that consisted of a single sentence. Do not attempt to harvest humans during Halloween. He submitted the report at 4:23 a.m. and then returned to his ship, where his crew was waiting. They'd spent the last 6 days dealing with their own trauma. Zarnak had started a support group for soldiers who'd been adopted by human civilians during combat operations. Morglax had taken up meditation. Krelnoth had gotten really into gardening, specifically petunias, as a way to work through his feelings about the Priscilla Donovan encounter. Flibix approached Vexthron on the command deck. Commander, the crew wanted to know what happens now. Vexthron looked at his second-in-command for a long moment. Now we learn. We adapt. We accept that we made mistakes and we do better. He paused. And we never go to Earth on October 31st ever again. Understood, sir. Also, I'm changing my name. Sir, I can't be the Annihilator anymore. Not after being chased off by decorative skeletons. It's not accurate. What will you choose instead, sir? Vexthron thought about this for a very long time. Vexthron the Educated. It's less impressive, but at least it's honest. The inexorable doom left Bureaucracy Prime later that morning. Its crew was diminished in pride, but significantly improved in wisdom. They would go on to have relatively successful careers in the galactic military, though none of them ever volunteered for Earth operations again, and they all developed a peculiar fondness for chocolate that their commanding officers found baffling. Gerald Henderson sold enough custom gutters in the 6 months following his viral fame to expand his business into 3 new states. He kept the containment beam scar as a conversation starter. Martha Henderson made him finish the gutters before he did any media appearances. Priscilla Donovan declined the reality show, went back to her normal life, and planted new petunias in the spring. They grew beautifully, possibly because she fertilized them with a combination of expensive plant food and the residual satisfaction of having defeated an alien invasion with a leaf blower. The teenagers who documented the entire incident tried to monetize it, but discovered that somehow every video they'd uploaded had been claimed by something called galactic copyright enforcement, and they couldn't make any money from it. The aliens, it seemed, had lawyers, and in Sub-Basement 73 of the Administrative Nexus on Bureaucracy Prime, Krelzix Tabornathon the 16th updated Humanity's file for the 18th time. He added Vexthron's incident report in full. He cross-referenced it with the previous 17 attempts. He highlighted rule number 1 in an even brighter shade of red. He added a new section titled, "Seriously though, we really mean it this time." And then, because he was thorough, he created a new supplemental document titled, "A Complete List of Human Holidays That You Should Avoid for Military Operations." The list was distressingly long. Halloween was at the top, marked with 17 different warning symbols. But Christmas was marked with 42 warning symbols, a skull and crossbones, and a note that simply read, "Don't even think about it." Krelzix filed the updated document, sent it to every military commander in the galactic database, and went to lunch. The protein paste tasted like regret, same as always. But today, he thought, there was perhaps a hint of satisfaction mixed in. Somewhere on Earth, 847 light-years away, a new October 31st was beginning. Humans were buying candy, hanging decorations, planning costumes, preparing for their annual celebration of managed terror, community bonding, and aggressive consumption of processed sugar. They had no idea that somewhere in the galaxy, their Halloween traditions had become the stuff of military legend, that combat instructors used footage of Priscilla Donovan with a leaf blower as a training example of underestimating civilian populations. That the Thraxilon incident was required reading in 3 different military academies as a cautionary tale about the importance of cultural research. They just knew that Halloween was coming, and it was going to be fun. The Galactic Custodial Archives would, of course, continue to receive requests for harvesting operations on Earth. It was inevitable. Some commander somewhere would look at humanity's file, skim the first page, think how bad could it really be, and ignore rule number 1. Krelzix already had his incident report template ready. He'd titled it, "We Told You So, Comprehensive Edition, Mark 19. Udim, in the vast complexity of galactic bureaucracy, in the infinite expanse of space, in the countless civilizations that rose and fell and rose again, one truth remained constant. Humans celebrated Halloween every year with enthusiasm and creativity and an alarming amount of fake blood. And the aliens, despite having access to FTL travel, energy weapons, and computing power that could simulate entire universes, could not read a simple warning label. The file remained in the database, updated and comprehensive, containing 4,216 pages of detailed explanation about why October 31st was a terrible time to visit Earth if you had hostile intentions. Rule number 1 remained at the top of page 1, written in letters that couldn't get any bigger without requiring a larger data pad. Never take prisoners during harvest. And somewhere in the cosmic accounting of the universe, humanity's Halloween traditions had achieved what no military force ever could. They'd created a peaceful deterrent through the simple act of being themselves. Loud, creative, enthusiastic, and absolutely, completely, magnificently insane. Vexthron the Educated, formerly the Annihilator, now a wiser and significantly more humble military commander, would spend the rest of his career telling younger officers one simple piece of advice that he wished someone had forced him to follow. Read the entire file. Yes, all of it. Yes, even the appendices, especially the appendices. Because the universe is full of species that look harmless but aren't, and humans are at the top of that list. They survived on a death world by being tougher than everything trying to kill them, and they express that survival instinct through holidays, culture, and decorative skeletons. If you can't understand that, you have no business going anywhere near their planet. And then he'd pause. Remember a 67-year-old woman with a leaf blower and a bowl of full-size Snickers bars, and add one final note. And whatever you do,